With more and more movies easily available on streaming services, it's harder to know what's worth watching and what might be a waste of your time. There are many hidden gems out there waiting to be discovered, and we want to help you find them. This is Trailer Rewind, a podcast where JJ and I, your virtual video store clerks, sift through the shelves to help you discover new favorites. Today is September 7th, and The Yellowbirds is available on Amazon Prime. Now, because what's available on streaming services can change, it's possible that by the time you're listening to this show that this has changed. You can easily find where The Yellowbirds is streaming using a service like JustWatch.com. If you're on Letterboxd and have a Patron or Pro account, JustWatch is integrated into your account. Awesome. So when you look at the Trailer Rewind watch list or Trailer Rewind episode lists, you can easily see a film such as The Yellowbirds or other films that we've watched if they are currently available and where. And if you don't have a Patron or Pro Letterboxd account, you can easily get a 20% discount if you go to truestory.fm/letterboxd. So let's take a look at the trailer to see what The Yellowbirds is all about.
Yellow bird on a windowsill. Yellow bird on a windowsill. Pretty little pig and a
Hey, man. You from Virginia?
Miss Bartle, is Brandon home?
He's out.
I'm just following up on a few things from Brandon's last post. Has your son ever mentioned the name Daniel Murphy?
Listen, whatever you're selling, mister, we don't want any.
Oh, I'm not a recruiter or anything like that, Miss Bartle.
You had him already. You don't get to take him again. You understand? Thanks for looking out for him.
You bet. We look out for each other.
Promise me you'll take care of him over there.
Yeah, of course. No.
You guys have to promise to do what I say.
Yeah, sure thing, Sarge.
Don't give me that no short thing this time. You do what I say, I'll take care of you.
CID, what is that?
Criminal Investigation Division.
Now they're gonna kill some of us, we're gonna kill some of them.
We got civilians, Sarge. Come on, hold up!
What happened over there?
I'm not accusing the Army of anything. I just want to know where my son is.
He's still there! 1 o'clock! Wait!
You know, when I'm looking for films, I look at the trailers and say, okay, this looks interesting. There's something that's a draw to this. There's things like this one. For me, initially, I'm looking at this cast, this amazing cast of really familiar faces that, you know, I didn't expect to see in a film like this. I've got Alden Ehrenreich, we got Tye Sheridan, we've got Toni Collette, you know, and Jennifer Aniston,
right?
Jason Patric. This is a mishmash.
Yeah.
This is not anything that I would normally expect to see in a film together. So that intrigued me. And I thought there's got to be something about this story. Right. So then I look at what am I being presented in this trailer? And for me, I was like, here's some type of suspenseful thriller, you know, wartime thing in terms of there's a cover up about this Private Daniel Murphy, and there's something going on, and there's this really complex mystery, and there's, you know, whenever there's, you know, military involved, is there a cover up to hide something? What's going on? And you've got, you know, distraught parents. I thought, okay, this is going to be a really interesting suspense thriller about
a mystery.
What is?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Chasing down, kind of like a few good men or something like that, where it'd have this real sort of strong narrative momentum that would bring you through it. That's how it felt in the trailer. The trailer's really well composed. It's actually pretty comprehensive. Not like I'm used to trailers. I actually think it's a really good trailer, but not really for this movie.
I felt the same way by the time I was watching this movie. I went back and I watched that trailer again.
See, this is the key thing. I didn't watch the trailer until after, so this might be an interesting point of contention for us tonight.
Well, because it sets up something, and I agree. This trailer is amazing. I love the pacing, the cutting on this, everything, the way it puts all the pieces together. I'm expecting this like heart-wrenching, just, you know, where is this going? Because clearly we've got a young innocent in war, and, you know, we've got, you know, a sergeant, we've got the experienced sergeant, you know, who's, I'm going to, you know, watch out for you boys. I'm like, you know, we've seen all the tropes. Right. And so I have a feeling of where this are going. I know these character types. So I thought, okay, we're going to get an interesting story. And that's not what I got out of this movie.
Yeah.
And I think that may be why, looking at where you fell on your ratings,
Sure.
I'm just peeking here. Yeah, I think, this is, again, why I try to stand by the do not watch a trailer for a movie if I know I'm going to watch it, because it can set up those expectations. It can set up anticipation of a certain type of film. And that's where marketing comes in. Once they get your money, in the box office, once you buy that ticket, okay, that's it. Yeah, I mean, you could complain, you could get your money back, but I mean, typically, I don't think I've ever walked out of a film and demanded my money back. I will always see it through, and I may be disappointed in the end, but I want to give the film its chance. And this is a case of, I think, we're watching the trailer first set me up for something that it didn't. That's not the film that this is.
Yeah, I never asked for my money back either. I vote with my dollar and with my microphone. So if I don't like it, everybody's going to hear about it. And that's the big thing. You're right. It does set you up for a different kind of movie. One thing I will say, though, is that I felt, again, I watched the trailer after I saw the movie, but in watching the movie, I feel like the movie kind of sets you up for that too, a little bit. But the payoff isn't as frustrating when it subverts your expectations midway through the film. Not like the trailer, where the trailer really, brings you in with these hard, intense moments. And also, I mean, one of the things that's really amazing about this trailer is the way they deliver the accolades and the quotes about it.
Oh,
it's super powerful.
Yes.
I feel like the marketing team deserves an award for how they marketed this movie, even though it's not for the movie. It's just a really great advertisement for a different movie. But I ended up, when I was being set up for the detective story, the mystery, the crime, the sort of military crime thing in the movie, it felt a little bit more subtle. It felt little bit more as if it was feeling its way into that. So then when it subverted the expectations and when we got to the real sort of emotional thing that this movie was about, I ended up not disliking it. I ended up liking the way they sort of walked me around that circle, thinking that it was something more intense. And again, we haven't talked about this yet, but not a specific very linear narrative, which I appreciate in films. And I thought the creative way that they told this story ended up working for me in the long run, even though, again, since we're talking about the trailer, it's very different from what the trailer is trying to set us up for in this movie. And the title's terrible. The title must be the title of the book, too, I have to just say.
Yes.
Because twice in the trailer, they mention the title. Once in the movie, they do. So they repeat the same line in the trailer twice. So it's like they need to feed you what this title was, because it has, unless you understand what it's all about, there's no reason to use this title for this movie either.
No, and I think that's one of the challenges when you've got a book that's going to give you a lot more time to get into character, backstory, all of those pieces, where something like The Yellow Birds, which is we get once in the film, and it's that, one of those, what do you call them? A chant or something they use to keep their cadences. They're marching. Right. Yes. And so we see that once, and I can see that in a book that's a motif that could be coming through, in a character's mind, echoes of that throughout. Would make it appropriate for the title of a book. But you just slap that on the movie because it's based on the book, and you don't draw that out, because I've saw many reviews where people said, I don't understand the title of this movie. This doesn't have anything to do with it. It's not mentioned. I because it's there, I'm like, okay, it ties back to boot camp. It ties back to something. But that was one place where I felt like you're not giving me what I want, which is some explanation of the title. One thing
be helpful,
I mean, we go back to our other bird movies, which this could have, fallen in with, like,
the
goldfinch. Yes, we know what the goldfinch is there.
Yes.
Right. Yes, exactly. We can connect those things. Yellowbirds. Is it a commentary on our main characters? That's not what the point of the film is, at least. And I feel like it's taken a small part of the book and it's given us that film, and you have to make those choices anytime you adapt. And I understand that. But yeah, I feel like if you're going to make that change, then change the title to better connect or represent what this story is going to be about. And that's one piece. And that it's a war, it's set in a war, but the trailer sets me up for, it's a suspense thriller. So I'm just looking at it as wars in terms of the backdrop of some type of political intrigue, something going on. about morality, all of those things. When we get into it, this film isn't a war. I mean, it is, because it deals with the consequences of war. So it's that story. I agree. Like halfway through, it really pivots into the character piece of this film, which is entirely different from what the trailer sets up and what from the first half of the film sets up.
Yeah,
and
I see that that you really felt like the character aspect was huge with it. For me, it really sort of became this sort of watercolor about tragedy, and about wartime tragedy in a way that reminds me, and it's nowhere near the intensity of something like Apocalypse Now. I don't want to say that, but in the kind of sort of impressionistic thing about the terribleness of this particular war. That's kind of how I felt like this was. And I didn't really get that much into Bartle so much as the commentary about how war can ruin people as a whole. It handles tragedy in a really sort of interesting way and shows you the psychology about it too. And because of that, I think, whether you want to go deep on this character, on the Alden Ehrenreich character, that's Brandon Bartle, or whether you're just sort of, if people really do like wartime movies and like to see the sort of full spectrum of emotion that can be brought to you with war, especially the tragic parts, that's where this movie is going to be strong for you, or you're going to want to see this movie, not for any of those things that the trailer is going to suck you in on.
Oh yeah, this is not a glorification of war. No. It is also, it is tackling, as you've mentioned, a lot of complex issues. So it's not, say that's the challenge of, it's not taking a particular stance on war is good, war is bad and destroys people. It is really like a tapestry of, we've got these stories, and it doesn't have a strong sense of one particular point of view on that. I think, like as you said, the watercolor, we get a lot of different perspectives on things, and that makes it a very different type of film than a typical war film. And I'd say those people that are looking for another, film, another war, 21st century war film set in the Middle East, this is probably not going to be your type of film, because that is the setting for it, but it is tackling much more complex issues. It's not about good guys versus bad guys. We're in all shades of gray here. And I agree. It is really about tragedy, loss, family, all, how people get transformed by trauma. So that is, I think, not what a typical war film viewer is going to want, right, when they sit down to watch it. So it is something,
the real sort of soft human side of what can happen in war, and in a modern war, which I think is interesting too. Yes. I think we have examples of this in older wars, but I haven't seen this treatment been given to modern soldiers and modern war, and that was interesting to me too.
And so I'd say that's what I would say. Don't group this in with war movies. This is more drama that has a wartime setting to it, because I think that's where I would say this is definitely more human drama. Set this wartime setting aside, that gives you some, bits and pieces, but is really about these characters and trauma and drama. And that's sort of the place I would put this for people. If you're looking for a good drama, you're looking for tragedy, human connections and content, all of those types of things, you're going to enjoy this movie. I think there's a bit of war. It's not so much that I want to say it's for people that don't like the horrors of war. There are moments of that. Yeah. But it's not something that I think is overwhelming. And it often is done in the context of how our two guys are, what impact that has on them.
Yeah, and don't you think it's interesting that last time we talked about The Wall, which wasn't really a war movie either. It was set in a war, but it was this sort of psychological thriller set in a war. And so now we get this like heavy tragic drama that's set in a war as well. It's interesting that we're in the middle of our wartime series or our war film series, and we haven't really found a movie that focuses on war as of yet.
On war. No. So, given that it's not a war film, it's this type of tragedy drama, which to me seems to be something that is more in your wheelhouse of films that you really connect with. So how did you end up ranking and rating this one?
Well, it was tough for me because, it is really just fraught with tragedy. There is suspense leading up to the tragedy, but whether or not you bought into that sort of criminal mystery thing or whatnot, you feel like tragedy is just around the corner throughout the film. So that was a bit hard for me, but I gave it 3 stars actually, and I put it as a like, because even though the subject matter is kind of hard for me to swallow, I really liked the execution. I really liked the nonlinear storytelling. I really liked that my expectations of the mystery were subverted in a subtle way, not in the way that, we found from the trailer. But I went back and forth, and I ended up giving it a like. Now, even saying all that comes up in my flick chart, and it comes up against my middle block, which we've talked about before, but is another Trailer Rewind movie, which is All About Nina. And that movie for me is right in the middle, because the whole movie isn't something that I like, but the powerful scenes in All About Nina, which are tragic and emotional as well, resonate with me much more. So the Yellowbirds ends up in my bottom half because of that, because it couldn't beat All About Nina for me. But I have it down at 184 out of 266, and where that sits is just below Aniara, which is interesting. Another Trailer Rewind movie. Yeah. And then just above, this is going to sound totally crazy, but Godzilla versus Kong, which I think, I like the popcorn nature of Godzilla versus Kong, but again, that emotional connection, the emotional feeling that I felt for the tragedy for the Yellowbirds, it had me sit there. It is about 5 above The Wall. So I did like this above The Wall. I felt it was deeper subject material and whatnot. But I think the interesting thing to say about all these rankings that I'll just say here is that I gave it 3 stars about my feelings about it, but where it says Flickchart says it should be in my rankings is a 1.5. So really, because of the way it compares with other movies, it shows up lower. But I think this movie is better than I would even rank it in the way that it came up against my other movies in Flickchart. How about you?
Well, we will see where our conversation goes if you're able to move me off this, because I did not have a good experience with this, and I don't know if it's the trailer and expectations, or if it was just my mindset at that time. I just did not connect with this film at all. I appreciate nonlinear storytelling. I looked at this cast and I thought, okay, there's some talent here. I just did not connect at all with anybody in this film at all. And I felt like they were just moving through the paces of getting through this film. I couldn't draw a lot of strong emotional arcs across this. I wanted to in so many ways, but I don't know if it was the way the editing happened, because I'm fine jumping around back and forth time. I can keep track of that, but what is the reason for when we're moving? Because at a certain point I thought, oh, okay, we're now here. We're not going back. And then 20 minutes later, oh, now we're going to get more flashbacks. So it just was inconsistent in something. So it ended up really low. I mean, my middle block on Flickchart is The Sixth Sense.
Oh, wow.
Right now.
That's an interesting one.
So it was, and that's a weird one. I feel like I need to re-rank that. So it didn't make it to the top half, but then it just kept not being able to move up. So it ended up at 778 of 785. Wow, so it is way down there.
Low.
Way down there. So it is below some other Trailer Rewind films. If you remember The Vanishing of Sydney Hall.
I do. Yes.
And 999.
Okay. Below 999. That's interesting too.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just right there. And again, maybe our conversation will redeem this, but right now it's sitting at 1.5 stars for me. No like, because I just really did not connect with this film at all. And there was, it's not that I hated it. I just feel like it couldn't execute on the ideas that I thought I was expecting. And then as I adjusted my expectations, as I saw where it was going, I still didn't feel like I was getting anything from this story. It's treading in a lot of common tropes, which is fine. You can do that well. And I just didn't know what this wanted me to feel, what it had to say. And that's where I ended up. It's just in a very dissatisfied place by the time we finished this one.
Well, it's not. You're not meant to feel good after this movie. I will definitely say that. So maybe that mixed with a little bit of your lost feeling is probably why it ranked so low for you.
Yes. And so over Yellowbirds has a weighted average review on Letterboxd of 2.9. That is based on only 889 reviews.
889, that's low.
On Letterboxd.
That might be our lowest yet.
I think that is one of our... I might have to check Aniara. That one was pretty low as well. Whenever you get to foreign films, we sometimes we get
with this
low
cast,
numbers of reviews.
And only 800 people.
Yes.
Or 900,
over at IMDb, it has a rating of 5.7. So again, both these are below that sort of mid mark there.
Very close, very close to what I ranked it.
Right. And then, but over at IMDb, it's based on 3.6 thousand reviews, which is still relatively low. Again, from this cast, I would expect a lot more people wanting to check this one out. We will see. And so that's our recommendation. Is this a movie for you? If it is, you can go check out The Yellow Birds on Amazon Prime. If you're still not sure, we're going to dive into a conversation about The Yellow Birds in just a moment. But before we start our search for answers about The Yellow Birds, we need to give credit where credit is due. Trailer Rewind is a member of the True Story FM Entertainment Network. Check out all our great podcasts at truestory.fm. Our episodes are engineered by the wonderful Pete Wright, and our intro music is Doodah by Ian Post. All right, JJ.
Yeah.
Walk me back from 1.5 stars. I don't want to be there. I really hate being at that point. So,
well, how does
this film work?
My first question for you is just reading, what you wrote and how you feel about Bartle. It really felt like this movie is about Bartle, and I don't want to disagree with you because I understand that he is our vessel for the story,
right?
But
right.
I think that the way that the energy in the film is focused is really sort of directed at Murph. And Murph is, for me, was meant to be the sort of vulnerable piece of the puzzle that we're meant to identify with, as opposed to Bartle. And so if you believe that Tye Sheridan, which is interesting because my youngest son had me watch X-Men Apocalypse just this past weekend. And so to see Tye Sheridan turn around as Cyclops and then to this, I was like, oh, okay, that's a little different. But I believed that Tye Sheridan that Murph was that vulnerable, lost kid, even when Bartle is stepping up for him and saying, he's good, I got him, this kind of thing. And because of that, because with Jennifer Aniston, with Maureen, his mother Maureen, sort of affecting this piece to Bartle, said, please take care of my son, and all these things, and all these people showing him as this vulnerable thing. I really bought into the fact that this kid needed help. And so because of that, as we watched him deteriorate, and then as the story sort of wound its way around what was happening, how we felt that potentially there was something nefarious that had happened. And then what we're presented with when you finally get the reveal is something that is somewhere in the middle of right and wrong. And there's no real answer to what it is. And I felt connected to the despair that Murph had, and then the decision point that they had when they really found him and found what they had to do with him. I didn't understand their decision, but I could not for the life of me fathom what the right thing to do was. I couldn't fathom why they were the only two people there at that time, and all this thing. And that's the thing. And so it basically explained the rest of the trauma and the confusion and the, if you want to put it in the sort of more sterile terms, the cover up that what happened in the beginning of the movie. And that the way the story wound around to that, with the whole time me buying into Murph being this person that needed to be protected, that actually worked for me, again, in a tragic way. It was a way that, again, if you're interested in seeing the psychological effects of war, I think you should watch this movie. And I think the cast is spectacular.
Oh yeah,
I love Alden Ehrenreich. Everything I've ever seen him in, I'm always like, I can't wait to see the next movie with him. And then this will pop up, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know about this. I like everything he does. I think Toni Collette. Wow. Toni Collette, and she's, a master, but what she delivered in this, she was everything. She was good. She was bad. She was a confused mother who was scared. I mean, she was fantastic. And I guess we want to just keep going into the actors. Aniston, this movie. So we did Cake on Trailer Rewind too. And I really like Cake. And this movie mixed with Cake, this movie made me wish that Jennifer Aniston had never been Rachel on Friends, because she is always going to be Rachel. because those are iconic characters, but she can do so many different things. And I'm sitting there watching Rachel do this other thing and crumpling and becoming, distraught and ruined, destroyed over and she's fantastic at it, but I still see Rachel.
Yes.
And I feel terrible about that. So this movie plus cake made me wish that had never happened. So I don't know. There's a lot to that there. But I think that, again, I think the trailer before the movie led you to believe it was something completely different. But if it doesn't connect with you emotionally, this movie's not going to work in anything, because it's going to feel like we talk about that watercolor thing. It's going to feel like a jumbled mess if you don't connect emotionally with it.
Yeah. And that's the issue I had, because by the time I got to the end and I saw where it went, I was able to reflect and say, okay, this is an entirely different movie. And now I'm recontextualizing all of these characters, because Jack Huston as Sergeant Sterling I'm just expecting him to be, he's the jerk. He's the guy that's, he's Tom Berenger from Platoon. He's going to go in there. You can't trust this guy. He tells him, I'm going to get you in there, and you're going to see action. And it's like, we're going to go out, we're going to kill people. That's what we're going to do. It's like, no. That's not the type of person that needs to be associated with our two young, innocent, men here. This is not
our
good for
little
them.
Yellow birds.
Right. Exactly. And I thought, no. But then by the time we get to the end, I thinking some different things about him, because we can get into some spoiler territory here, as we get into the investigation and we thinking there's a cover up, and Sterling, commits suicide, and it's, we still don't know what happened, because we're still, we're back here in the present. And I'm thinking, okay, here's a man who's, I have to assume, based on the bits and pieces I have, because I don't have that much screen time with him, he takes a lot of responsibility for something that he wants to escape from. So I'm thinking this is bad, and he's ultimately guilty of something horrible. By the time we get to the end, no, he's not guilty of anything, because again, there's no blame to be placed to any one specific person. And it really makes me think about the guilt that he is feeling and the responsibility he feels for what happens to Murphy. And I thought, that's an entirely different character, and we didn't get any of that.
We didn't. And
along the way.
My apology for that, at least in my mind, is that his suicide is not about Murphy. And the little snippets we do get of him, I think he's actually a complex character, because he's a little bit better than Tom Berenger in Platoon, in that he seems to exude some sort of lovable,
yes.
angry guy, right? This kind of thing.
Yeah.
But once we get to battle and we see that he's kind of losing his marbles, and he's salting the earth, he's salting the bodies, he's doing some things. I think so. The only way that I apologize for that is that that the Murph thing was just another sort of nail in his coffin, and that he was already on the downward spiral. And it's just this kind of thing. And it's not a good excuse for it, but he wasn't connected enough to the Murph story for me to say that that's what happened. And I don't think what they did was so wrong. I don't think the need to cover it up was as great as they made it out to be in the story. I think and that's why I think the explanation from Bartle, when he finally sits down with Maureen and she says, "Why didn't you say anything?" And he says, "Because I promised to be the first to tell you." That was really powerful for me.
Yes.
That I was
yes.
all of this confusion that I had all the way through, that there is there a criminal thing? Is it not? No, it was just a promise that he made to Murph's mom. Like that, I actually really liked. So, but I agree with you about the Sterling character. It wasn't enough screen time, so I had to excuse it with this sort of insanity that led to suicide.
Yeah, but no, that final moment between Bartle and Maureen it's one of those moments where you can say, that's why Jennifer Aniston signed on for this movie.
Yeah. And
that moment there. No, it's amazing. And I'm like, I wanted more of this earlier on. And yes, I get those Toni Collette moments, as Amy, Bartle's mom, and all of that, and her trying to make sense of what happened to her son over there when, Jason Patric as Captain Anderson shows up, and he's got questions because he's, here to investigate what's going on. And she's like, no, you already had my son. You don't get him again. And, she can't motivate him. She doesn't know what to do with him. And it's tackling all of these issues that we continually read about in the news of the trauma from, our troops over there coming back and being unable to adjust back to normal life because of the things they've seen and what that does to them. And he's 20 years old. I mean, he's a kid. Sure, troubled kid and, wasn't sure what to do with his life. There's a lot of those guys over there. But this is not what he signed up for. And, so there's a lot of pieces. And when we look through everything, I mean, we get the whole intro of, we're going to get the voiceover from Bartle, setting up everything that we need to know, that, the war was there to kill us. We lost a lot. We lost Murph before we really lost him. And so that tells me there's something, okay, what does that mean that he's lost? He was lost beforehand. What does that mean?
I didn't like
when we get
that voiceover was over Bartle's face before we were introduced to the characters, because he talks about Murph and we see Bartle and we haven't met them yet. So it's disorienting. But anyway, that's just a quibble.
I agree. I was like, is this Murph? Yes, it was a little bit, but we get it figured out. Cause then we jump into, they're there at whatever in the,
training
tent,
camp,
it's what their Christmas party or whatever.
Yes.
And Murph's got his eye on the girl, and he, we get the whole setup of Bartle with his confidence and Murph with his, I'm a wallflower. I can't go talk to this girl. I can't dance. I can't do all those things. We get the basic setup of the differences between these two guys in that context, so we get that. I was like, okay, that was a nice way to give me the essentials of what I need. I got the tropes. I know who these guys are, the basic outlines of them. They're different. And then we get to see them in, we see, Sterling tell Bartle, like, okay, you're with him, and it's, at first I'm like, what, why? And it's like, well, he knows Murph needs somebody to back him up on this, that they need to stick together. And then we get, we get into it, and it's, we get all the scenes of them in combat, all of that. And then I think it's they're camped out. There's the building with the two snipers in it, and they, take them, they take one out. And then, one of their guys gets shot, and it's like the first time Murph's seen him right next to them. And it's this big moment. And then we cut from that, because that's where Murph says basically like, I think I'm going crazy. I keep, thinking like, I'm glad it wasn't me. And Bartle's like, no, that's not a crazy thing. That's the same thing to be thinking. And then we cut and we jump forward in time to Murph coming back. So I have to piece together Bartle's, at the beginning saying we lost Murph. And I thought, okay, we get all this up to this point, and we see it's a traumatic event for Murphy. And then we suddenly are jumping forward in time to Bartle coming home at the airport. He sees his mom. He doesn't want to talk with her. He hangs out in the bar. We get a whole huge stretch of stuff with Bartle at home and not adjusting. And I'm thinking, okay, we're not going back. We're not going to get any more detailed information about this. But then we do come back for what I think is really like the pivotal Murphy sequence, because it's for me a great sequence. Is they're going into town, there's a body in the road, it's a booby-trapped body, all of that stuff,
bomb is what they called it.
The body bomb, all of that stuff. This is where I have trouble. I think it's before the body bomb when Murph gets hit with the shrapnel, or is it there?
Yes, it is before.
No, it is before, because he's right. So they're out. Something, gets shot up, gets shrapnel's like he's, he's in the hospital, whatever, all of that. He's going through rehab or whatever. And that's where he meets this nurse or
same girl,
doctor,
same girl from the
same
Christmas
girl
thing. Yeah.
Right. And that's again where I'm like, okay, clearly the Christmas thing was after, I'm assuming.
See, I didn't think that.
I wasn't sure. But again, does it matter?
I don't think it matters.
I don't know.
But I didn't think that.
Right. But we get this thing where, okay, then we see Bartle, they're looking for Murph, and Murph is just like, for lack of a better term, he's stalking her. He's there, and I can understand that. It's that whole like, she, helped him, and it's somebody who's sympathetic. She's attractive. She cared for him. You can see that he's an 18-year-old kid. He's going to be drawn to her. Exactly. So he just sits there. And
so this is how I interpreted that. He fell in love with her.
Right.
He was ashamed of how he dealt with his injury and how he needed her in that moment, but he was deeply in love with her for taking care of him in the way that he needed to be taken care of. Yes, he's stalking her. You're right, but and I don't want to put a but there. Let me eliminate the but, because I have lots of problems with that kind of behavior in movies.
Yeah,
I will say that the way that I interpret it is that she was the last thing that he had to keep him going.
Yes.
And,
yes. Well,
and that's what he needed. That was his sort of his way of saying this is worth it because she's taking care of people, all these kind of things. So.
Yes, I agree, because then what happens next is, for me, and I want to go to this clip of Murphy and Bart, because Bartle's trying to just like coax him out of there. Let's go. We'll get out of here. We'll do this. And then, Tye Sheridan, as, Private Murphy, has this little, monologue that, to me, it was really powerful and just really conveys everything that's going on in his head.
I'm never going to tell anybody I was here when I get back. When I get back, when I get a place to myself, my own little place, not talk to anybody. Wake up every morning, go run, eat right, let my fucking hair grow back out. And I might show up. And if somebody says, "Hey, Murph, didn't you used to be in the Army or something?" And I'll just say, that was something I did for a little while. Or maybe I won't even say that, maybe. I don't want this to be a part of me.
He does not want to go back. He wants to have a strong separation, or if he goes back, he's leaving this behind. He does not want any of this coming back with him. He's trying to partition these two parts of himself of, this is not me. This is not who I am. I'm here and I'm going to have to separate this. And when I get back, I'm going to completely deny, having anything to do with this, because it is traumatic. And then as soon as he finishes that, the mortar attack happens, which, okay, so there's his object of affection dying.
Yeah, his last straw.
I mean, his last straw is taken away from him. And then that's when we get the next sequence, which is they go into the town, because they say it was a show of strength, right? We weren't ready to go back, but we needed to show strength that even though mortar attack, we're here. You're not chasing us out of here. We're going to go show strength into this town. And that's the final stretch with Murphy on everything. And for me, it's again, powerful segment on its own, but I emotionally couldn't connect all the pieces, again, because Bartle's our audience surrogate. So we're with him. And I feel like he's not a man who's going to share his emotions. So I don't know what he's feeling all the time. Murph is, out here already shutting himself off. So I don't have access to his emotional state in terms of what he's going on. So what I feel like should be a powerful emotional moment for me isn't, because I'm just not allowed access to that. And again, that may not be the intent of this.
Well, I think we're finding where we have this sort of fundamental different view of the film, because I never felt like Bartle was my surrogate. I always felt like Murphy was. I always felt
how
like,
do you identify with him
based
so much
on
when
the events of the way the events are brought to us? I think we're meant to feel it as deeply as Murphy. We're not meant to lose our humanity in the way that it happens to Bartle. We're meant to lose our humanity in the way that it happens to Murphy, because at least that's how I felt. Right? I mean, when we lose the nurse, when we experience the kid dying next to them, I don't think we experience it as Sterling. I don't think we experience it as Bartle. I think we are meant to experience it as Murphy, and then we. I don't know how I argue for the end of the film when we have no more Murphy, but the piece is that that I think is really that Bartle is sort of, again, the word that I used at the beginning of the show was vessel, the vessel for telling the story of the tragedy of war, and the tragedy of war that we're supposed to sit with is Murphy's tragedy. At least that's how I watched it. So,
okay, no, I can see that it's a difficult jump for me to make, but again, I see so many strong moments because when we do have that moment where they're heading back and Murphy disappears, it's like, okay, we can't leave a man behind. We've got to find him. And it's trying to find where he went. And then it's these, citizens saying, oh, the old woman saying, oh yeah, I saw an American soldier, but with no shoes walking this way. And then there's the man with the cart saying, oh yeah, I saw a boy over here, and show us, where is he? And it's dark, and it's heavy, and it's powerful stuff that Murph snapped and just like, I'm done. I'm walking out of here, and I can't do this anymore. And we don't know the specifics of what happened, but he's killed, he's brutalized, he's mutilated, and it's not pleasant. Thankfully we don't see that. We're not subjected to that, which I was thankful for.
I thought the way that they hinted at it was enough.
Exactly. And then it gets to, Bartle's decision, as he's explaining to Maureen of, why didn't you bring him back? And he's like, no, I didn't want your last memory of him being like that.
And his point of view is valid, and so is hers when she said that's not your decision to make. And that was such a powerful statement from a mother there. But his opinion's valid. I get it. And I think, I guess the reason why I felt like Murphy was my surrogate is because I felt lost, that the trauma made me feel lost. And that's what happened to Murphy. It's not what happened to Bartle.
Oh, yeah. Right. Well, see, and I look at it as, in Bartle's decision, coming back to the conversation he had with Murphy, where Murphy says, I don't want this to be a part of me. So if his body comes back like that, it is forever connected to the brutality of war. And that's not what Murphy wanted. Right. He said, well, I'm not going to tell anybody, because people say, oh, weren't you in the army? He's like, no, I'm not. I don't want this. And so by keeping his body there and, letting it go down the river, this part of Murphy always stays here. And what is back home is always separated from that. And to me, it was Bartle honoring sort of Murphy's wish.
And I'm so excited that I get to talk to you about this story because, and again, you didn't like it as much, so it's hard, but how did you feel about the baptism symbolism, that they showed the baptism before they all went to war, and then with Bartle wading him out into the river, his desecrated body out into the river and letting him go under, like, I don't know. That was really powerful for me in the way that they delivered it. Again, not really hammering it into you, just like putting it there, because what Bartle's intent was to, this is too strong a word, but to bless the body that had been desecrated, to let it have a better death than it was given. And like that kind of stuff, I don't know. It was show and not tell for me. So I ended up liking that kind of stuff, even though it was so intensely sad.
No, I love the end of this movie.
Okay, good.
I wish it had, that whole sequence, I'm like, this is beautiful. I'm
going to blame the trailer. I'm blaming the trailer for what you didn't like about it.
Everything in the, I guess it's all the Bartle stuff back home with like him with his girlfriend. He walks across the river and all. I was like, that, it wasn't giving me anything. And again, I guess because I was approaching it as Bartle as audience surrogate, and I'm expecting to get something from him, and I'm not. Whereas you're looking at it from Murphy, that is an entirely different lens. And yeah, when I look at those are the key moments that I really enjoy, is anything with Murphy where it's he's learning, he's, the trauma, all of those pieces. Tye Sheridan, that's the character this film's about. But it just, I guess I come back to, Bartle's first quote, early quote at the beginning where he's like, what is it that he says? Exactly. He says something along the lines of, I wish I knew how to put this together to make sense, or I wish I knew the right order to make sense of this. And I feel like the order that we get things doesn't help us make sense of it. And because we're getting Bartle's version of it, he's trying to sequence things. So if he can't make sense of it, then the audience isn't able to make sense of it because we're not getting it in an order that allows us to make sense. And I understand the reason for that, because there is no logical reason why things happen. There's no, nothing working for good in the order of these events of like, that's going to justify this being the right thing that either Bartle did or what happened to Murphy being, that there's no, it makes no sense for that. And so I appreciate that, but for me, it forced me into Bartle's corner. Whereas now, like I said, if I look at this, the Murphy moments are the strengths of the film.
They are. And so to continue with that, because you like the end of the film, I'm going to hark on another thing that comes up at the end of the film, because consistent with what Bartle wanted to do for Murphy, the ending that we get is that he changes the story of how Murphy interacted with the girl. So not only does he bless the body, the desecrated body, but then he blesses the spirit of the boy by relating a story that didn't happen to his mother to give new life, right? New life to this kid that, again, was ruined by the war. And so, again, we don't have Murphy for that end of the movie, but his story is still prominent, and it's changed in a positive way. So, again, I like the quote you just brought up, that, I wish I could find an order that made sense. I think that's probably consistent with the way the book was written and the way the movie was told. But I can totally see why, if you have two different visions of being lost in this movie, you're going to like it or you're not going to like it.
Yeah. Well, okay. You're bringing me up from the 1.5. I might be willing to come up to 2.5.
I think you should watch it again. I think you should watch it again with someone in your family who is not affected a lot by this kind of stuff, but also that won't watch the trailer and see what they think about it.
Okay.
If they appreciate it. If not, then find someone outside your family, because it's a heavy movie. It's really heavy.
Oh yeah, it is. No, it's one of the. I'll definitely have to find somebody to watch this one with. It will not be my wife, because she said, "What do you watch?" I was like, "Oh, for Trailer Rewind." "Oh, what is it?" "Yellowbirds. It's a war movie." She said, "Thank you, but no thank you. I'll be leaving."
Thank you, no. Yes.
Exactly. Well, okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess you redeemed this one for me a bit. So I do appreciate that. Yeah.
But I see your starting to point in the story too, because I think if I wasn't emotionally connected to it, I agree that it would be a jumbled mess. One thing I did want to talk about in terms of camera, you mentioned editing before, and there were two of my favorite pieces were two times that they used fade outs particularly well.
Okay.
And early on in the movie, we have a low shot, I think, of if someone's head or a car, and as they then fade out to go to battle, you see a tank rolling in, or some sort of armored carrier. I shouldn't say a tank, but armored carrier rolling in, and it appears as they fade very, very slowly. It's matched up in the scene that it looks like the tank or the symbol of war is rolling over this sort of piece of home, which I think is done really, really well. And then the other one is when Bartle finally is going to tell the story to Maureen, and they're sitting across the table at the military prison, and they're talking about this. When he starts to tell the story, you get they line it up, this fade again very well. And fades aren't really used very commonly anymore. So when you see it, for some reason, it sparks my idea. But they line it up so that the table that they're sitting on becomes the road that these vehicles are driving across. And they slowly fade into the story when they do it. I just thought those were really innovative. And they only used it a couple times in the story. It wasn't a common editing change. It wasn't a common cut. But they did it with purpose. And I really liked that. I did think it was interesting on the trailer that it won the Best Cinematography Award at Sundance, which, again, only 889 reviews on Letterboxd.
I know.
Shocking.
I know. Well, I think it's, again, one that it didn't get strong reviews when it came out, and that's all it takes is a couple bad reviews, and that's it.
I think it's got to be story. I think it's got to be the story things that you have, because honestly, like, execution of this film is pretty tight. There aren't a lot. I couldn't argue with the way that the film was technically executed here.
No, I couldn't either. Like I said, there were some story things, and I hate to say this, I don't know. I'm with you, Alden Ehrenreich. Sign me up. I will show up for his stuff, but nothing, aside from Solo, a Star Wars story, which, again, even within the Star Wars, films, isn't one that is highly celebrated by fans for various reasons. But he hasn't had that breakout. And so, that's the pieces, and Tye Sheridan is in the same place where super talented, but just hasn't had that, this was before Ready Player One, and even that hasn't been one that he's leveraged to, like, become that A-list, that's going to carry a film. And I think that's one of the other issues is who's going to see this? Well, the guys that are in war movies aren't like, Toni Collette, give me more of that. Jennifer Aniston,
they're both
but
so
they're
good in this movie.
They are so good in this. You don't have the dude, the bro guy to carry you through this movie, and that's
Alden
unfortunate.
Ehrenreich is my dude.
Yeah,
That's my
I
dude.
agree. Yes, he is. Hail Caesar.
Right?
All
Right.
about
He
that.
was my
Yes, I
favorite
know.
character in a tiny role, but my favorite character in all of Hail Caesar. Yes.
Yes, exactly. So that's it's a messy film in terms of trying to categorize it and all that. So hopefully people that have listened that maybe were on the fence are swayed by, as I was. I think there are moments, and gives them maybe the right filter to start watching this film, because I feel like there are some films, if you walk in blind, you can have a disappointing experience, but then with a little bit of information to contextualize it for you, it sort of gives you that, okay, this is what I should be getting out of this. It helps frame some things. And I don't want to say that's weak filmmaking. It's just there's some types of films. I've done this myself. I'm not a big fan of Westerns. And then the Criterion Channel had a whole thing of Western noir. I love noir. And I watched these Western noir films. I thought, I love these. I would have never watched them as a Western. And if you hadn't given me the idea of, look at this through the lens of this is a noir, I wouldn't have even thought that. I would have just thought, it's a Western and it's doing some things. But it gives me the framework for that. So thank you for giving me a good framework to go revisit The Yellowbirds. Now, I'm not going to have time to do that before our next film coming up, which is The Kill Team, which we will be talking about. That one is also available. So this was our war trilogy that was all on Amazon Prime. The Wall, The Yellowbirds, and The Kill Team, available to stream on Amazon Prime. JJ, thank you so much for turning me around on this one. We had a great conversation.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much. And to all our listeners out there, Hondo. Thank you for listening to Trailer Rewind. If anything we said here entertained, educated, or even enraged you, we'd like you to tell people about this podcast. Whatever your listening platform is, please share, rate, or write a short review. It helps other podcast listeners find us. If you enjoy connecting with other film fans, you can become a member of our community on Discord. It's free, and there's always an interesting dialogue or debate to jump into. You can also financially support us. Perks include early access to episodes, exclusive Discord channels, the opportunity to chat with us live before we record an episode, and the warm feeling you get knowing you are contributing support to the behind-the-scenes resources that help everyone here at the Next Reel family of podcasts. So please join us on Discord or become a Patreon supporter. Either way, we would love to have you be part of our community. Hondo.